The Honourable Michael Woodhouse.
Well, thank you, Mr Speaker, and I do appreciate the opportunity to take a call on the third reading of the Parental Leave and Employment Protection Bill. As it's a Members' Day, it is customary that members of the Executive don't tend to speak on members' bills, and I do appreciate that I've been given the opportunity to do so. Firstly, to talk a little bit about what we've heard from the person sponsoring this bill, and also as Minister of Workplace Relations and Safety to lay out what the government does intend to do by way of improving and extending the paid parental leave to parents over the next year or two. And I'll say this about Sue Moroney. She is certainly passionate about this issue. I have no doubt about the authenticity with which she has championed the issue of paid parental leave. But I do worry that she has mixed the politics and the passion to such a degree that it is impossible to work out which is which. Nevertheless, I do want to touch on a couple of the elements that she said. And I heard her say that it was her Labour colleagues who have, in her words, had the guts to support this bill. And that is perhaps true, except what she didn't say was that wasn't the case when they were in government. When money was sloshing around and Labour was spending money like drunken sailors, locking in structural costs that this government has had to deal with, the very canny Dr Michael Cullen, of all of the things that they could have done, of all of the passionate things that they could have supported, increasing paid parental leave to 26 weeks at a cost of who knows what, but several $100 million is the best estimate, was not part of the Labour government's agenda. It's very interesting to see that as a members' bill, and knowing that it is not possible for members' bills to have the kind of financial impacts that Ms Moroney would say, right, now we're in opposition, it's time to increase paid parental leave. When we are in the most straitened times that this country has seen in 80 years, suddenly it's a priority for Labour. When for the previous years they didn't see raising the length of paid parental leave to 26 weeks as a priority. Lions in opposition, Mr Speaker. Lions with other people's money when they don't have the fiscal costs of the decisions that they want this Parliament to make, but lambs in government. And indeed, there are some other statements made by Ms Moroney about what the government did or did not say about paid parental leave, and I want to make it very clear that the government always said it was prepared to extend paid parental leave as and when fiscal conditions allowed. But that is really important to understand, that the fiscal conditions did not allow that. But what did the government do? Because $500 million has been bounced around as a possible cost. I think that overly exaggerates the cost of Ms Moroney's existing bill. And let's remember, we're not debating the original bill. This isn't a matter of principle and passion, because Ms Moroney herself has watered down her own bill. Why? Because the goal is no longer to extend paid parental leave to 26 weeks. The goal is to embarrass the government. The goal is to expose the government. And that is the politics of this.
Order.
That is the politics that is interfering with the passion. But the government, in those straitened times, the toughest conditions in 80 years, the legacy that was left of structural deficits for 10 years, which we have seen halved despite the impact of the Canterbury earthquakes, and this government has come up with around $500 million of measures to support children and their families. And we've seen that in the free GP visits for under 13s. We've seen that in the breakfast in schools. You know what the most disappointing thing about the Labour and opposition was? They campaigned in 2008 on the fact that this government, should we have the privilege of taking the Treasury benches, would gut working for families, would gut interest-free student loans. And do you know what made them most angry in the 49th Parliament? We did no such thing. Through those vulnerable periods, we made sure that the supports that were locked in place stayed for our most vulnerable.
The government cares.
And the government does intend to increase paid parental leave. Not only is it prepared to do that, but it has already locked in through Budget 2014 the fiscal appropriation to do just that. It is necessary now to change the legislation to give effect to that, and it's my intention to bring a government bill to the House in about June of this year and pass it this year for effect on the 1st of April 2016, as we have already appropriated. And it will increase the duration of paid parental leave for those parents who are already eligible for it. It will go to 16 weeks in the first year and then 18 weeks thereafter. But it's going to do more than that, Mr. Speaker. It's going to broaden the range of people who are eligible for paid parental leave. Because at the moment, the legislation provides, I think, for a very one-dimensional view of employment and one-dimensional view of employees. And I think what we know now is that both the employment relationships but also the parenting arrangements have changed significantly in the last generation or two. So firstly, people work in more than one role. They work in different ways. They may be self-employed, they may be contractors, they may have multiple employers, and they may have moved recently before expecting a child. None of those conditions are currently met by the existing legislation or by the bill that Ms Moroney has introduced. The government will change that. The government will extend the range of parents that will be eligible for paid parental leave to include those different working arrangements, to include multiple employers, to include those who have only been working for their employer for 6 months, which would actually rule them out under the current regime. But it's also going to recognise the fact that parenting arrangements can be different as well. I take, for example, and I acknowledge the Maori Party intervention into this particular part of the policy that's being developed, and that is the concept of whāngai, or a traditional Maori adoption, which is not recognised presently in the law, and will be when the government introduces the bill into the House in the middle of the year. That will be very important, and I want to acknowledge the Honourable Te Uraroa Flavel for his intervention to ensure that that very long-standing traditional means of bringing up children will be met in this scenario. So, Mr. Speaker, what we have is a passionate member who has no concern for fiscal impact, introducing a bill that I believe she introduced with the best of intentions, although it's a little hard to untangle the politics from the passion, who then watered it down when she realised she wouldn't have the numbers and actually that the government was coming up with a better arrangement to support families by increasing the duration of the support and broadening the nature of the relationships that would be covered by it and the number of employment relationships that would be covered by it. And so I do acknowledge her. But the government takes this very seriously. Support for parents and enabling particularly mothers to re-enter the workforce is a very important part of growing this economy and ensuring that people stay connected with the workforce. I should also add actually that the bill being introduced in June will allow parents to keep in touch if they're on paid parental leave. At the moment, if you go back for a single day, you lose your entitlement to paid parental leave, but that is not practical for people often in highly skilled jobs or who want to keep in touch with training and development or who need to cover for leave. There will be sensible provisions in the bill that will enable that to occur. So the government, the National Party will not be supporting Ms Moroney's bill. It will be introducing a very sensible range of measures which will deliver a better outcome for parents, and I look forward to Labour's support when that bill is introduced.
Mr. Speaker.
Jacinda Ardern.
Mr. Speaker, it's my pleasure